Hello, I'm Ron Franklin for Bassmaster's Classic Yearbook. The Classic has always been known as a go-for-broke type of tournament. There's only one place to finish in the Classic, and nobody remembers second place. But in 1989, winning seemed to take a backseat to almost winning.
This is the largest single nationally televised fishing outing in the history of the world. This is the largest crowd ever to be in his house, ever.
The Classic it's the only tournament that these anglers fish that is in itself a career builder.
Winning the Classic is you have won the Super Bowl. You are, quote unquote, the world champion.
There's no tournament in the world that compares to the Bassmaster Classic. The media you have there, the prestige, it's our Super Bowl of fishing.
The Classic is big time. We're talking 25, 30,000 people out there screaming, and then the television audience that will pick up on it. When you win it, everybody in the world knows it.
It's what everyone dreams about, and it's become the pinnacle on top of the mountain. It is the Super Bowl. It is the World Series. It's the NCAA tournament for bass fishermen.
The pressure of knowing that this is the biggest event in the sport. And, if you win the Classic, it'll make your whole career.
At the Classic, the fishermen are pulled in several different directions. They have the media to deal with. There's often over 300 media representatives at the Bassmaster Classic. A rigid schedule that Bass puts them through that starts early in the morning and runs until 10 o'clock at night.
The angler that can put all that together and really strategize and figure out how to overcome some of the negatives that the Classic brings to the event probably has greater odds of winning the event.
Well, to win a Classic, it takes someone that can really just focus on what they're there to do.
You look at a PGA golfer like Tiger Woods, when he goes and plays an event, he's extremely focused on what he's doing. And when we go fishing, when we get in the boat, we're extremely focused on what we're doing.
You have to learn to be able to deal with the media and with the attention and enjoy it, but yet realize what you're there to do.
The anglers that can handle the pressure, that can handle the added crowd, participation that you're going to have on the water around you. You're going to have a lot of spectator boats.
The spectators mean no harm. It's a curse to the angler. There is no question about it. It's a big distraction.
That's probably the hardest part of competition, is mentally dealing with the obstacles that you have out there with you.
You have to have everything go just right, and a lot of times better than you expect to win.
If your day is right, or your 3 days is right, man, you can be a hero in a hurry, that's for sure.
And, if you lose the Classic, you're just nobody. Nobody remembers 2 years later who was second place in the Classic, I mean, it's important to do well in the Classic, but the reality is first place is what it's all about there.
Classics are classics. No one really ever remembers who finishes second or fourth or 25th or even 40th.
You hear guys say, well, I'm fishing to win. Everybody's fishing to win. You're fishing to win every tournament, but you take chances in a Classic that you wouldn't take in a normal tournament.
This particular tournament, it was at the James River, and this is the famous situation, the scenario where Jim Bitter had it, in hand.
Going into the last day, I really had a fairly good lead, I think about 5 pounds. And somebody'd have to have a tremendous day to catch me, or I'd have to fall flat on my face. Well, I found out when I got in, Hank Parker did have a real good day.
You know, I would hear them say, you know, boy, somebody could win this thing if they had a big string. And they said, how'd you do? I was, well, I got about 14 pounds. Yeah, right. So, but I did have.
That particular classic is probably one of the most heartbreaking moments that I can ever think of in all the years of classic fishing.
James River is a pretty historic place to fish. I mean, it's marked by a lot of you know, early American history.
It was so great to have a tournament in a place so rich in history of the United States and also the Civil War.
All up and down through there was a lot of, you know, Jamestown. They settled there. That was the first settlement. And we had Williamsburg and Pocahontas and all that.
It's a beautiful river. I always enjoy the aesthetics that water has to offer. And the James is certainly a beautiful river with a lot of history.
But I think the guys who went there created some new history. And I think Richmond will always be known among fishermen as one of the better fisheries in the country.
Well, the James River is a tidal water fishery, and it's a fishery that can be good at times and can be real tough at other times, and it's a spotty fishery. There's a lot of miles of that waterway that it's just hard to catch bass on.
That time of year, which was a summer event, it's pretty stable on lakes. The patterns don't change that much, but in a tidal situation, they're changing every few minutes because the tide's changing. So that's probably the biggest challenge in that type of water.
The fishermen liked the fishery. The James River was great. The crowds were really good, and we were very comfortable going there.
Some of the very best weigh-ins we had was at Richmond, Virginia there. We had good coliseum and good crowds and just great fishing fans.
The 1989 Classic was held on the James River for the second straight year. The 1988 winner, Guido Hibdon, returned to the Classic as defending champion, but it wasn't easy.
Guido, after his Classic win, he had a small heart attack, which is, if there's such a thing as a small heart attack.
Should have been everything was going great. You know, the crazy thing, I just won the Classic, and Dion and I, we go to Truman Lake up here, and he run the boat all day long, and I kind of sat around, and it felt like I was tired.
He says, I just don't feel real good. And he said, I think I'm just tired. You know, we put in so much time and we worked so hard. He said, I'm just tired. He went in and he laid down. And when he laid down, he hollered at me. And when I went in, I couldn't get him up.
You know, and then come home that night and have a crazy heart attack.
Didn't do any damage, but he laid in intensive care for several days.
Stella must have gotten 1,000 calls from people around the country, not just fishermen, but everybody loves Guido.
I called Dion, his son, a couple of weeks afterward to see how things were going.
He was a friend first and a Classic champ second, so the first concern was, how's he doing? And then after that, it was, oh my goodness, you know, oh, he's got the year he's been waiting for. This is the opportunity he wanted. You know, is he going to be able to take full advantage of it?
Naturally, when I heard about it, I was concerned. And I used to kid Guido about being the old man. He was 15 or so years younger than I am.
You tend to think of these people, these pros, as being invincible, and it kind of brings back to reality the fact that, you know, they're human beings.
Guido's health problems was a shock to me, and it was really great to see him come back.
Guido came back and fished that following year on that same place and almost won the tournament again.
Every time he's got sick, he's come back stronger. It's crazy. You know, he's had two heart attacks and a little bout of cancer, and every time he comes back, he gets better.
He just literally willed himself to be there and to get well, and that is a mark of just a true champion in this sport. That you hear about basketball players, football players playing injured. Well, Guido, I believe, just honestly and truly just willed himself to get better.
When Guido came back, and everybody expected him to be limping, but he came back with his guns blazing. He was wired. He lost a couple of pounds. He felt good. His little problem was pretty well had resided. And he just came on like gangbusters. So it's almost like we forgot about a heart attack.
The last day, I mean, to come in there and as soon as Ray started, you know, to announce who was next and what have you, I mean, I could see half of the, you know, the end of the building. I mean, where the Coliseum, where we were weighing in at, and they were already standing. I mean, I had seen them start getting up. It makes you feel good.
I think for Guido, and this is just my take on it, I think it was just another hurdle in that man's life. You know, I don't think he's ever had it easy. He's not a quitter, he's a survivor.
There was this one little bitty creek, and I can't even remember the name of it, but it was so small that it was hard for two boats to even pass in this creek. Hank Parker and Ron Sheffield started in that creek, and they met several times during the day, trolled into each other, and, you know, really don't know what all they said to one another.
Just he was coming in as I was coming out, and he later said that he didn't catch any fish in there and wouldn't be back.
Hank and I had the conversation, you want to know if that's where I was catching my fish? And I said, well, yes, that's where I'm catching them. And so he told me when he was leaving out of there that basically he was going to let me have that area.
Hank knew that Ron Sheffield was in that creek, and Ron Sheffield knew Hank was in the creek.
When I came back to the ramp, he was there telling some of the other anglers about all these big fish he lost.
I had enough fish hooked the first 2 days of that Classic that had I landed those fish. I actually could have slept the third day of the Classic.
Ron Sheffield's in the boatyard, and he's telling everybody about all these fish he had on and lost them.
He was talking and he was saying, boy, you can't believe all the big old fish that I hooked today. He said, I mean, I lost 5 or 6 big fish.
I had that Classic won. I mean, it was my Classic to win or my Classic to lose, but I just had real poor misfortune.
He couldn't keep his mouth shut. Because the first day and the second day he lost them, and I mean, he had 4 and 5 pounders all the way up to the top, and he couldn't get them in the boat.
Man, don't be telling that. We'll have some company. And he said, oh, no, not in there. I didn't catch anything in there. You don't have to worry about me being back in there. No, it wasn't there. So I believe that.
I looked over across the other boat, and there's Hank Parker sitting over there, and he's just listening to everything. I mean, he's got his hearing aid tuned in, and boy, he is listening.
And he came up to me the last morning and told me that, hey, you know I told you could have that area, but, you know, I really have nothing else.
And the next day, he was in the first flight, and he ran to that creek where he lost all them fish.
Well, when we blasted off the next morning, they were just, both of them, just running up that river as fast as they could go to see who'd get in that creek first.
We had a little race to the fishing hole.
These two men, both of whom great fishermen and had located fish in this area, and they're both trying to get there, knowing full well that only one of them could be. Well, that's not lack of friendship, that's just competitiveness.
I'm telling you, we had those Rangers fired up, and we were hard as we could get them and go, and we took every shortcut behind pilings, over wrecks, things that you probably should have normally run a bass boat, trying to beat the other one in there.
They put the throttle down on that Mercury outboard and raced up, and the first guy got there got the fish. It's that simple.
I'll always say that Sheffield really just laid that Classic in Hank Parker's pocket, because Hank listened to everything Sheffield said.
That's why I've always said that, you know, a fisherman has to learn to keep his mouth shut. Whether he's winning, losing fish, no matter what he's doing, you shouldn't be spreading let rumors get out about your fishing area, because it tends to draw crowds.
Well, going into the last day, I'm not sure anybody even knew where Hank Parker was in the standings, because frankly, Jim had such a big lead, and the 2 through 10 were stacked pretty closely together. I'm not sure anybody even thought Hank was a threat. I'm not sure Hank thought he was a threat, if he told you the truth.
No, he really wasn't on anybody's radar screen for us.
you know, the battle on who was going to win this deal, and it was pretty much done deal that Jim was going to win it.
I got myself so far in the hole. First, Jim Bitter caught more fish than I thought he would. Number two, I didn't catch as many fish as I needed to catch to stay in the hunt and have a shot at the last day. It's kind of like being a lap down in a race.
I think I'm savvy enough to know that no matter what you catch, somebody could still beat you, but I thought that the odds were certainly in my favor that I was going to win the tournament, unless something drastic happens.
No, I thought he had won. My hat was off to him. I know the area he was fishing. I knew of it then. I stayed out of it like other anglers did, and I thought it was his victory.
Watch the scales, folks. 12 pounds and 15 ounces. Boom! Jim Bitter, 24 pounds and 13 ounces. And folks, he's 5 pounds ahead of the second man.
No lead is insurmountable in any tournament. That's been proven before. You know, a guy could have a 20-pound lead and lose.
I think we most had pretty well given it to Jim. He had a real good, solid thing going. Everybody knew where he was, pretty much where he was fishing, and he had it to himself, and he was doing his little deal, and it was working fine. It worked fine. They worked well enough to win.
I've learned that you don't presume anything.
5 pounds might be a huge lead on one lake or river. It might not be anything on another body of water. And on the James River, it was a good lead, but it certainly was not secure by any means.
And Hank or any of the other guys, there were probably 10 other guys that probably thought they had a shot at coming back if they do everything just right.
He had a right to be confident at that point. Not only did he have a pretty sizable lead, he was catching limits of fish every day when everybody around him was struggling to catch a limit. So his lead seemed insurmountable.
Unless some major travesty takes place, I think I will win it. If Tim's not really a bad omen.
It's thought of more frequently as the tournament that Jim Bitter lost rather than the tournament that Hank Parker won.
Read the record book. It says that Hank Parker won it. But you have to read the asterisk that says not really. Jim Bitter lost it.
And going into the last day, I really had a fairly good lead, I think about 5 pounds. And somebody'd have to have a tremendous day to catch me, or I'd have to fall flat on my face.
Well, not only did he have a big lead going in, he started catching fish right away. He picked up where he left off the day before, and he caught 4 keepers pretty quick.
And then I finally caught a small fish, and I thought it was a keeper, but I don't want to stick him in a live well and come in the afternoon and find out he's short.
And I said to him, I said, will it keep? Will it measure? And I guess my culpability here is I might have put thought in his mind that he needed to measure. He says, yeah, I think so, but then he reached down and got his measuring board.
When I measured that fish, it was an easy 12 1/2, 12 3/4 inches, I think, something like that. And when I stood up to turn around and put him in the live well, he just squirted right out of my hand. And
both of us were dumbfounded. Both of us were just amazed.
I said at first, you know, how stupid could I be to do something like that? But I really didn't do anything wrong. The fish just made a energetic twist and got loose in my hands, and that was it. He was gone.
That turned out to be the last fish that Jim caught that day.
15 minutes, I forgot about that. I mean, I still thought I had a good chance of catching more fish, and I was confident yet. But, you know, things happen.
I caught a great big string that last day, the biggest string of the tournament, much bigger than what anybody would have anticipated under those conditions that anybody could have caught.
He comes from nowhere, and he catches like 16 or 17 pounds, whatever it was, or 18 pounds. It was a big stringer.
But he caught a huge string that last day. Something like 17, 18 pounds, somewhere in there. And one of the biggest, you know, classic strings in modern day history.
Some of the guys said, man, I saw Bitter, and he didn't have very many fish. Of course, I was in 9th place, I believe, if I remember right. I was in 9th place, so nobody ever even thought about me. I'm the only one that's thinking about me, but I'm listening, you know. And I'm hearing some of the guys saying, hey, oh, so-and-so, if he's got a pretty good string, he may turn around and win this thing, you know, because I don't think Jim's got a whole lot.
I'm nervous. Don't do it slow. I know how a man feels on death row. I've been sitting out there for about 30 minutes. I'm about to have a heart attack. Put him on the scale, Dewey.
Hold on just a minute. We're not going to do it. Just a second.
Put him on the scale.
I just got to ask you one question. You realize that 13 pounds will put you in the lead.
Put him on the scale. Let's see what I got.
All right, put him on the scale.
And we kind of talked back and forth what he had and what I had, and it was going to come out just ounces one way or another.
6'10" to win. All right, watch it. For the Bassmaster Classic 1989.
6 pounds, 7 ounces.
6'7". Champion. 2 ounces. He won by 2 ounces.
Winning that tournament was so much more dramatic to myself than had I led it from start to finish as I did in the first Classic I won in '79.
There's a couple of things that looked like it was destiny, you know, lined up that I wasn't going to win.
And it was one of the closest Classic victories that I've ever experienced.
I ended up second, he ended up first, and that's the name of the game.
Hey, I won the big prize, and boy, I was just very excited. And I hate that for Jim because he was a great guy, and I know he was just devastated.
Jim Bitter had it. He had it won. I mean, it was his tournament.
I'm sure he felt bad for Bitter, but he also would accept a win as a win.
Hank, in his own way, felt sorry for Jim Bitter's calamity. But by the same token, he took the money and the trophy.
The smartest thing I did was putting graphite oil on Jim Bitter's measuring stick. Only teasing, Jim. Don't, he'll be shooting me.
He just had a great day, and that's what it took to beat me.
Those kind of classic comebacks on the last day are few and far between. They're rare in classic history. So what Hank did was pretty miraculous.
When Hank Parker hoisted the Bassmasters Classic trophy that Saturday afternoon in Richmond, he became only the 3rd multiple winner in Classic history. And when the Classic returned to Richmond the following year, Hank Parker not only defended his title, he announced his retirement as well. Hank Parker left the sport the way he wanted, at the top of his game. For Bassmasters Classic Yearbook, I'm Ron Franklin.